You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Hello and welcome to another exciting episode. We have John Miles here as a guest today. John is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and global thought leader in intentional leadership, behavioral science, and human potential. He also happens to be the host of an incredible podcast called Passion Struck, which is ranked the #1 alternative health show globally with over 75 million downloads. Welcome, John.
It is so awesome to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Can't wait to have this discussion.
Absolutely. And, I'm really excited about what you are really passionate about nowadays, which is this whole epidemic that the world is facing with anti-mattering or hashtag unmattering and what the solution is. So let's dig into that right away.
Yeah, this all started for me about 15 years ago. I kind of received this message from the universe saying that I was supposed to start helping. The words I was given were the lonely, the hopeless, the helpless, the bored, the beaten, the broken. And I had no idea what that all meant. At the time, I was a senior executive at Lowe's and then Dell. And this mission seemed so foreign to me because I didn't understand who those people were. The way they sound, I thought these were homeless people or something like that. So I didn't know how my inherent talents could help them. But as time went on, I started to realize that I was actually one of these people I was being called to help. And what I realized about all of them is that they had a feeling of being invisible in their own life. And the more I started to research this, I discovered just how profound it is. It's impacting what I feel is 60 to 70% of the global population. So we're talking about billions of people who feel this way. And I think it's what Henry David Thoreau described a century ago as people living in quiet desperation, meaning we've become invisible to those around us, and therefore we feel invisible ourselves. And that has culminated in what I am saying is the epidemic of unmattering, which I think shows itself in people feeling lonely or hopeless or helpless.
Okay, this is so broad. I mean, this is so great as a subject because there is so much of this. And there have been efforts to pick out certain groups of people and highlight them to make them matter. Would you not agree to that?
Well, I would agree with that.
Mm,
But I think we're facing a dilemma in society that ever since the evolution of the digital world that we live in today, we are becoming less and less involved in the communities that powered humanity for millennia. And I think people are are finding themselves lost because they've lost that connection to others, to community, to that feeling of belonging in a tight knit group that really helps foster their sense of meaning and identity.
okay. And you're right. There is an epidemic of loneliness, especially with older people, because of the breakdown of certain family structures that we did used to have, whether the families were dysfunctional or not, there was still more of a family structure. What do you feel? I mean, you've done a lot of research. This is a thing for you. What do you feel are some of the beginning ways to remedy this?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would like to say is that although loneliness does impact older people, it's pretty much pervasive across all society because there's a real difference between feeling that you're lonely and being alone. But I think that the groups that are facing this the most, and Jonathan Haidt wrote a great book on this, The Anxious Generation,
Yeah.
are the lost generation of Gen Z and now the future generation of Gen Alpha. Because what's happening is they're being raised by parents who themselves feel invisible in their own life. So what we're doing is we're just passing this down, and it's starting this pattern that's not correcting itself. In fact, it's getting worse. So I think one of the first areas that we need to focus on is, what does mattering look like at home? And how are we showing up as a parent to our kids? Because I think we all face it. I know with my kids, if they kept coming to me, talking to me about things that are going on in their life, whether it's an art project that they've completed or some school project or homework that they need to do, and I'm completely tuned out, there's only so many times they're going to come to the parent asking for that help, get rejected. And so they start then going to other means to feel like they're connected, which at this point becomes their device. So now they start trying to connect to a digital friend or presence in their life, and they're substituting that for real parental guidance. The other
Mm.
major area would be finding different ways to connect at school. And I think Jonathan Haidt did a great job explaining this in his book, that if we could start adopting a world where phones were not allowed at all, smartphones, until kids reached the age of 16, where we stopped allowing schools to have phones present in the classrooms, if we stopped allowing our kids to go on social media when they're younger, those would be four great starting points.
Okay, I could not agree with you more because my kids don't have smartphones. And my 18-year-old just got a phone that's sort of like a dumb smartphone because we limited it. And so
Yeah.
completely agree. And I was always aware of that. From day one, when I saw this, I said, my kids will read, they will have art, and they will not be on phones. And they only learned computers when they had to, because they'll be behind if they don't learn computers at this point. So I'm all for this. And I agree. So what's different then? So I love Jonathan Haidt or Hate. I also like the book he wrote about the coddling of the American people. That's like how we have no grit anymore. That's another whole story. So what is different about your book from Jonathan's book?
Well, I have two books coming up that
Mm,
address this. The first is a children's book called "You Matter, Luma," which is coming out in December, and this is really a parable about a little bunny named Luma, who has a strong mentor named Oliver, who's an owl. And what I'm trying to do through this book is for kids 4 to 8 to give them a parable about this little bunny feeling that she doesn't matter in the forest that
mm,
she lives in. And we go through the importance of mattering to yourself, how your stories make other people feel like they matter, and how in turn those creatures in the forest then in turn make you feel like you matter. And so it's her journey of discovering how much she matters. And to me, I thought it was so important because I think kids at that age are right at the formative stages of learning this whole concept of mattering. And I thought
mm,
that this book not only introduces it to these kids, but also to their parents and to teachers who could use this as a means to amplify the importance of this in their life. And
mm,
then I have another book that'll be coming out in 2026, which is written, that's called The Mattering Effect. And this focuses on the matter framework, which I created for this book. And why it's different from the anxious generation is I use that as the foundation for what's broken. And this offers this framework, the matter framework, which goes through these six different phases of mattering, but then it applies it first on a personal level. So how do we find, how do we build back mattering in our own lives? And then it shows you, how do you build it back in your relationships, in your family, at work, in your communities, and then society at large. So I think it
mm,
takes what Jonathan and Gordo Flett have done in their research, and then adds to it and amplifies the ways that you can solve this global crisis.
mm. Okay, so I love that you're starting with the children to try to remedy this before it's a problem. What about adults who just have gone through life, whether they know it or not, with the feeling that they just don't matter? And I think you're right. A lot of people just feel like they don't matter. Like, I just don't matter. And I don't think this is just a now thing. I think, as you said, even a long time ago, like in Thoreau's time, and I like that's one of my favorite sayings is, people living lives of quiet desperation. I never wanted to live like that. How do we start? How does somebody, just an individual who's not a kid, who doesn't feel they matter, what's the starting point here?
Well, I think there are a few different starting points. I can talk about me personally. I think a lot of it starts that we wear this, what I call mask of pretense. We are pretending so much to be someone whom we are not that we've forgotten who we really are in our core. And so I think the first thing is we have to have that wake up call, because what I found with myself is on paper, I had this perfect life. I had two great kids, a wife. I, at the time, was a C level at a Fortune 50 company, and everything on the outside looked like it was going so well. But on the inside, I was miserable because I was projecting a complete life that felt foreign to me. And
Mm.
I think what happened to me is what happens to a lot of people. I ended up in what I call an accidental career. I left the military thinking I was going to go join the FBI. And my class was canceled 2, 3 days before I was supposed to go to Quantico. And it caused a complete shift in where I thought my career was going, because I had no plan B when the class was canceled. So I had to find a job so I could pay for a house and other things, because I had recently left the military. So
Mm.
that took me into this whole career that I never imagined for myself when I was a child. And I had a couple wake up calls that, as I look back upon this, I wish I would have done a couple things differently. So one of them was that period of time when I lost the opportunity to go to the FBI. I look back and think I could have gone back to school at that point and really doubled down and gotten a degree in psychology, which was the thing that really interested me,
Mm.
and become a researcher or a scientist in a major university. The other thing that happened is I went into industry, and I went into first strategy consulting with Booz Allen, and then was a practice director at Arthur Anderson. And
Mm.
out of nowhere, Enron happened and the firm dissolved. And that was a second pivot point in my life where I could have taken a different path, but instead I continued down the business path. And I think the reason that that happened is you find yourself living to a certain set of standards that you start judging your life by: the car you
Mm.
drive, the the house that you live in, the community, and those that you surround yourself with. And quite frankly, it's difficult to switch from that career track to doing something different that you feel compelled to do. So I think the first thing that someone has to do is come to that realization. And the second thing that they have to do is to look at the abyss of doing something different and accept that it's going to come with risk, but it's much better to take that first step than to live in the hell that you're living with now, pretending to be something that you're not.
Mm. So, I was just listening to you and I was just thinking how many people are in that situation because it is not easy. You have a family to feed, you have a rent or a mortgage, you have relationships to sustain. And then all of a sudden, I mean, some people do it, but there's a whole negotiation also with the people around you. Hey, I don't want to do this anymore and it's going to be risky for the family, but I want to go off and do this. Right. So, and some people do it. More people are doing it now, I think, than ever, but that is scary too. It's a scary, and the abyss is correct. It's this, what am I doing here? So that's not easy for people to do. So what you're saying is if we just get back to or find at all who we really are, then we start to matter because our lives are aligned. Is that kind of where you're going with this?
Well, that's the starting point, because the basic thing that you need to do is you need to align your value system with your ambitions and your aspirations. And until that alignment happens, you're going to feel completely out of sync. But
Mm,
once you start getting that alignment back in place, then the circle begins. First, you will start hearing from others as you're going down this path that you matter, that the change is causing a positive impact to your life. And then once you get that positive reinforcement, it then causes the third element of the circle to start taking place, where now you start the ripple effect of helping others feel like they matter. But to
mm.
me, it's completely broken until you start rewiring yourself. And when you start rewiring yourself, others notice, they reinforce it, and then you start reinforcing it in others.
Right. So it's similar to self love. You can't love others unless you have self love. It's the same kind of thing. Help yourself to matter, then you help other people to feel like they matter.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. So then what's the next step?
So I think the next step is you have to confront the fears. And one of the things I always say is we are our own visionary arsonist. We tend to arson the very things in our lives that would take us where we want to go. So I have this saying that the most incredible person you're ever going to meet is the person who stares back at the mirror of you in the morning. And the biggest obstacle that that person is ever going to face is the person staring back in that mirror. So you
Mm,
really have to start identifying where are the areas in your life that you're arsoning the steps that could take you down the path that you want to take. And typically, the first thing we arson is the most fundamental step at all, and that is picking one area of your life that you need to focus on improving. Like in my example, I had a lot of post traumatic stress, both from the military and other areas of my life that I had suppressed for years.
mm,
So for me, in order to get through my stuck points, I had to put myself through therapy, which I had been resisting for years. So that started with cognitive processing therapy, went on to EMDR,
mm,
and other modalities until the point that I was able to overcome the stuck points. And the
mm,
miraculous thing that starts happening is once you deal with one area of your life, it naturally opens up other areas of your life that you start working on in succession that you don't even realize. It's kind of like this natural movement just starts happening. So for
mm,
me, it started me bettering my health, bettering my emotional connections, bettering the community that I was part of, and starting to get rid of elements of the community that were holding me back, and so forth. So it's picking fundamentally the thing that is holding you the most back from where you want to go in your life.
mm,
Because for me, because I wasn't dealing with these traumatic incidents that had happened, it was causing me to arson every single positive thing or step I wanted to take in my own life.
mm,
And one of the biggest ones for me was authority figures, because so many of them had let me down in the past, whether it was orders I was given, directions I was given, them letting me down when I needed them the most. And I had
mm,
to realize that not everyone is like that, and I can trust people again. But for a long time, it was hard for me to really trust a lot of the authority figures in my life because of past setbacks.
and betrayals. Okay, that's very interesting. So when we say that we want people to matter, so what does that really mean to you, that we matter to ourselves, that we matter to other people because we are doing something good in the world? I was just thinking when you were speaking, what does it even mean to matter to you?
Well, let's just take it as a work situation. So I think everyone has gotten pretty familiar with the point that about 75% of all workers are disengaged.
Hmm.
Well, the fundamental reason I think they're disengaged is because they don't feel like they matter at work.
Mm,
And I saw this firsthand when I was at Lowe's. My first job, I inherited this group, and about 10 days into the job, I have a meeting with the head of HR who tells me that the company had just done an engagement survey before I'd come on board, the first that they'd ever done, and I had the least engaged group in the entire company. 350,000 employees. I have the least engaged group. And so I started to do what anyone would. I started talking to peers and superiors about what was going on with my group, and heard that I had inherited a bunch of misfits. They're not punctual. They seem like they don't care, blah, 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 blah. But I took the step that I think a lot of people don't take is I let that come in and I processed it, but then I started talking to the actual people.
Mm,
And this caused me, because I had a 24/7 function, to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to meet with employees, to come in early in the morning, to sit down with as many people as I could, from the lowest ranking to the highest ranking in my group. And what I found was a systemic feeling that they didn't know why they were coming into work and what difference their jobs made to making a customer feel like they want to purchase something in a store, or making the bottom or top line of the company any better.
mm,
So it really took a rewiring and retraining of the group to instill in them the fact that they mattered to the company, and that their jobs ultimately impacted customer satisfaction and the bottom line of the company, because they were in charge of the security of the company and the operations of all the technology systems. And without them, the
mm,
company couldn't function. And you
mm,
would think that that would be pretty self evident, but
mm,
they had been beaten down so much and their morale was so low that it really took that level of reassurance to them, and then a building back of their self confidence, to understand the line of sight between their job and the corporate strategy. So I
mm,
think that's just one example. Too many people are doing their jobs and leading based on looking at spreadsheets and treating people as numbers and not as unique individuals.
mm,
And you really have to treat people the way that you would want to be treated. It's the cardinal rule. And
mm,
I think too often we look at a person at their job and we don't see the full person in who they are in their family, who they are outside of work, and who they were before they took the job that they're doing. So it's really treating each individual as an individual and making them feel like they matter. And the
mm.
same thing shows up in our relationships outside of work.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's so important. People can't get up in the morning and go do something when they feel it doesn't matter and be guessing that once you worked with them, they were probably happier in their lives just in general. Did you do any research about life happiness after you worked with your team?
Yeah, absolutely. Because what I learned was, when I would sit down with them, not only would we talk about what was going on at Lowe's at the time, I was learning about their spouses and their kids,
Mhm.
and what motivated them and what their interests were out of work. So, because I did that, you started looking at people's work life balance in a completely different way. Meaning, if someone came to you
Mm,
and said that they had an aspiration to write a book or something, you started to figure out, well, how can you work with them to give them the time to do that and do their job at Lowe's? Because what I learned pretty quick off, if you had a person who was happy outside of work, they were going to give more effort to work. So you think these things are accommodations that you can't make, or it's going to hurt productivity, when if you just lean into it, you actually are improving your productivity more than you could ever realize, just by giving a little to your people and giving them small concessions that matter immensely, because they feel like you care for them and are looking out for their well-being.
right,
So not
right.
only did the group within 18 months go from the lowest performing on the engagement survey to the second highest, we had
Mm,
a history of having some of the greatest promotions from within, to people taking leadership spots within Lowe's. But also than that, on top of that, happier lives in general outside of work, which we were able to measure because we started putting in metrics in that were looking at individuals' success both in and outside of work. because what we were trying to improve overall was a better work-life balance overall
Mm,
as one of our core metrics that we were trying to examine.
mm. Okay, so mattering matters. That's the key. Mattering matters. So, John, this has been very interesting. So, tell us what's one thing that what's one philosophy or mindset that you'd like to leave everybody with?
Yeah, I'm sure that many of the listeners have probably heard of Bronnie Ware. If you have not, she wrote this great book where she was taking care of people who were nearing their deaths. She was working in hospice,
Mm,
and she came up with the five primary wishes that people had on their deathbed. And
mhm,
it measures up almost 100% to the work of Tom Gilovich, who's a professor at university or Cornell University, who has studied people kind of in the third trimester of their life and what are their biggest regrets. The biggest regret that people have is not living the potential of becoming their ideal self. So
mm,
that happened in 76% of people that both Tom Gilovich found and Bronnie Ware found. So the biggest thing I would tell people is it's never too late to start trying to cross that chasm. And I think the best way to do this is perhaps not to try to start with a bucket list, but to start with a reverse bucket list. And the reason I
mm.
say that is we have accomplished so many things in our lives that we never thought we would be able to do. And that's what a reverse bucket list is all about. It's to go through there and look at the things that you've accomplished that you never in a million years thought you would be able to do. Could be writing a book, could be starting a podcast, it could be giving birth to a child, it could be putting yourself through boot camp. And you start examining those things, and it gives you the confidence to then take the leaps in your life that you want to do the things that your heart is calling you to do, that your passion is calling you to do. And that's what I would tell people to do is not start with a bucket list, but start with your reverse bucket list.
I love that because it's just being positive about a lot of the things that we just miss. We take a lot for granted that is so positive. So it's really like a gratitude exercise as well, in a way
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
wow, I did that and I'm so great, right? Yeah. I love that. Never heard that before. Well, John, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you for listening. If you loved this, write a review and we'll see you on the next one. You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact.